Hi, I'm Joe, and welcome to my final video in my series of videos about LEGO models celebrating the exploration of space. Today, I've got the Technic model Mars Rover Perseverance, which was a rover that was launched from Earth in 2020 and landed on Mars in 2021 and was sent out to explore the surface of Mars. And while I would have liked to have gone to Mars to film this video, it wasn't quite in the budget, so I found the next most inhospitable place I could think of, my vegetable garden. But we'll go ahead and move this inside and talk a little more about the model. Then we'll bring it back out here to do a little demonstration of the suspension. Okay, we're back in a more friendly environment now with Perseverance, which is the 5th rover that NASA has sent to Mars. I have to admit that my knowledge of Mars exploration by NASA is spotty, and a few things I had to look up. Like the first probes to fly past Mars were Mariner probes in the 1960s and early 70s, but that's all they did was fly by. In grade school, I learned about the 2 Viking probes in the mid-70s, which included an orbiter and a lander, and the lander took pictures on the surface, but it couldn't move. Fast forward 20 years to 1997, when the first rover landed on Mars. Sojourner was a solar-powered rover and operated for about 3 months. This was the only rover mission I followed in real time. There was another mission I remember that failed to land safely, and I thought it was a rover, but based on my research, all rover missions have been successful. It could have been the NASA Mars Climate Orbiter in 1998, which crash-landed because different teams of software engineers didn't use the same units of measure, and the probe approached Mars at the wrong angle and crashed. There was also a mission called Beagle 2, which was actually a European Space Agency mission that was supposed to land on Mars and deploy 4 solar panels. The ESA thought it crashed, but over a decade later, an orbiting probe found the landing site and took pictures showing that only 2 of the 4 solar panels deployed, and that prevented its communication array from working. There were also rovers whose names I must have imagined. Like I thought there was a rover called Pathfinder, but Pathfinder was actually the name of the mission that sent the Sojourner. And I also thought there was a rover named Surveyor, but Surveyor was actually a probe that landed on the moon, and parts of it were retrieved by Apollo 12. However, the 1998 mission to send the Mars Climate Orbiter was part of a program called Mars Surveyor 98, so maybe that's what I was thinking of. But the next 2 rovers that NASA sent were called Spirit and Opportunity, and I forgot about those, but they launched around the same time in the early 2000s, and they were both solar-powered rovers like Sojourner, and they operated for several years. Next was Curiosity, which was the next generation of rover, which landed on Mars in 2012, and is still operating as of September 2025. Then finally, the 5th rover, Perseverance, landed on Mars in 2021. So here we are with the LEGO Perseverance, which I'll just show a few things here, because I had to do research also just about this model, and I found a couple of other videos where I'm just going to put links here in the upper right corner, right there. The first one is from Racing Brick, who is a YouTuber who focuses mostly on Technic models. He does lots of YouTube videos, but is really into Technic and does a really good job of explaining how the Technic features work on this model. And the other link is for Josh Builds Stuff, where he actually did a lot of research about what the various modules on the rover do. And rather than just repeat what he said, I'm just going to put the link to his video. But I can't promise that I won't repeat some of the things they said when I'm going through this model. In addition to those 2 videos, there's the LEGO Augmented Reality app this model is designed to go with, and it has lots of great features that kind of explain what parts of the Perseverance do. And it also has some game modes where you can pretend that you're digging up certain rocks and storing them and making the robot do certain things. Of course, the robot's not motorized or anything, so you have to use your imagination there. But this is a LEGO Technic model, as you can probably tell. It's rated age 10 and up, which I think is very optimistic if your 10-year-old has built a lot of Technic before. I am technically over 10, and I actually had quite a bit of trouble getting this to work, and I'm not entirely sure that I built it correctly. So I'll demonstrate that here in a little bit. But as for the gadgets that are represented here on the Perseverance, almost everything is related to being a camera or an antenna, or in case of the arm here in the front, that's a drill for getting and analyzing rock samples, and there's a power unit in the back. Unlike the Sojourner, the Spirit, and the Opportunity, which got its power from solar panels, Curiosity and Perseverance use this multi-mission radioisotope thermoelectric generator, which is essentially a nuclear-powered battery. So you might be thinking, is this sucker nuclear? No, this sucker is electrical, but it uses the radioactive decay of plutonium-238 as a battery that powers the rest of the Perseverance module. And that's why you can see we don't have solar panels all over the top like we did with Sojourner, Spirit, and Opportunity. There are some stickers on the set. Here, this actually just shows you what the various knobs here do. These are actually controls you can turn to control the arm, which I'll demonstrate in a little bit. On the top, we have this connector here, which is what they call the differential, which looks very different than what I know of as a differential. We have lots of these 1x1 tiles that either mark important points on the rover, or in case they meet any creatures on Mars that like to play that chess game they played in Star Wars, then it was nice to furnish a board to them. And then up here, I believe this is a large camera assembly, and I think as part of the antenna, they've used a white carrot, which is an interesting part usage. Here in the middle, you can see this is kind of where the steering mechanism is, and I'll demonstrate that in a bit. And either I've not assembled things correctly, or the steering is really difficult on this model. Here, more towards the front, is the arm that has a drill on it, and there's like 4 different ways that it can be arranged. 2 of them you arrange by hand. One here is the drill on the end. That's just a ball joint, and you can turn it however you like, however you need to. And this joint here is also adjustable by hand. But you can raise and lower the arm using a gear here, or you can swing it side to side using a different gear, and that's what these 2 knobs here on the back are for. So I'm going to demonstrate those 2 functions, and I'll go ahead and tell you it's not fast, so I may have to speed up the video here a little bit. This is going to be raising and lowering the drill. There, I'm lowering it. That's actually not too bad. And then I'm going to raise it back up. And then if I want to swing it side to side, I can turn this one. And it seems like it takes a few turns before you actually notice it doing anything. There we go. It's turning it to its right. And this is also how you kind of fold the thing up for storage if you wanted to. In fact, if you did want to stow it away, you would fold the arm all the way up here to the inside, and you kind of tuck the drill in. I haven't figured out the science about how to best store the arm here. There's also a pin here at the top of the, or at the base of the camera, and you can just lower it. And that's for storage, but it doesn't really compress it a whole lot, especially when you got all these wheels down at the bottom. And now for the steering, which is the part I really struggled with, because there's 2 ways to steer the rover. One, here, I've got the steering mechanism in the forward position, which means when it's there, I can turn the rover left or right. And I'm going to get straight above, and I'm going to turn to the left just a little bit. It doesn't take much, but you can see the front wheel there is barely angled left, and the back wheel is angled the other way. And on the other side of the rover, it's the same thing. And if I turn it back to the right, the turning is very slight, although it seems to be better to the right, which makes me think I'm just off just a little bit somewhere. But when you look at the steering mechanism, it's not like it's using these gears, it's using just these, I don't know what you call these pieces that only have 4 positions. So anyway, it doesn't steer as well to the left. It doesn't really steer well either way. So now I'm going to try and put it back to straight. And then if I move the lever back, you can kind of, I'm going to see if I can do this in such a way that you can see all 4 wheels. What happens, they actually all turn kind of in a circle. And this is so the rover can just turn itself around. In fact, it drives better in a circle, I think, than it does going forward. Now, if I push this back forward, it's supposed to straighten the wheels out. But there has to be almost no resistance on top of the rover to get the wheels to actually do that. So now I'm going to try and demonstrate the suspension. The whole concept behind the suspension is to make sure that each wheel can independently go up and over certain obstacles. There's no springs or shocks in this particular model. It's all done with Technic pins, frictionless pins actually. And I'm going to lift the model up to demonstrate. You can kind of see the middle wheel goes up because the back 2 wheels have their own bending point, and the front wheel, if the front wheel has to go over something, the back wheels will still stay on the ground. Now, at least that's how the Rover works in theory. So let's go back out to our barren wasteland outside and see how it works there. Okay, let's see how well this goes over this little clump of dirt here. And I have to kind of hold the steering forward because it wants to pop back out and do the thing where it spins around. So I'm just going to let it go straight. And
one eternity later.
This is really hard to keep straight, but I'm going to try it here and see if the wheels just turn themselves. The mechanism is not very strong to keep them straight. All right, let's give it another shot. You see the wheels are not turning real great, and you can't really work it on this dirt. It's just turning the wheels, so I don't know if I'm ever actually going to get to do a demonstration over the rock here. There, that might be the best I can do, but again, the wheels just turn themselves. They have not nearly enough to hold them straight so that you could actually drive it over any rough terrain. But you kind of get a little bit of a demonstration of how the suspension would work if it actually could drive over that little lump of rock. So yeah, I'm not sure if I just didn't put the model together well, but the wheels don't roll nearly as easily as they want to turn left and right. So actually trying to demonstrate this on actual dirt did not work out very well. All right, we're back in now. And as we saw from the demonstration, the steering does not work, or the wheels really do not work with even the slightest resistance. And it was very hard to drive outside. So I think that this model, even though it is rated 10 plus, is much better for display and education and not so much for playing. Again, that assumes that I actually built it correctly, which when it comes to Technic, there's a non-zero chance that I didn't. Or it's just possible that my vegetable garden was too harsh a terrain and maybe the wasteland of Mars is just more gentle. One more thing I'll go ahead and demonstrate is this Lego set came with a side build. This is Ingenuity, which is actually like a drone helicopter. I think of this drone here as kind of like a GWP that we sent to Mars, that after they've accepted 5 rovers, they get a drone for free. And it was actually attached to the bottom of Perseverance when it landed on Mars and was deployed and flew, I believe, 72 times on Mars, taking pictures and studying the Martian landscape. There's not a whole lot to this build. The propellers move freely. There are 2 sets of propellers. If you get the top one going fast enough, the bottom one will actually rotate a little bit. It's got these gold stickers on the bottom. In fact, there was one sticker sheet that's reflective stickers, and almost all of them went here on the Ingenuity, including this one on the top. I think that one might be another solar panel. There's not a whole lot to this build, but it's a nice addition to kind of commemorate the first Earth-made craft to fly in the atmosphere of another planet. And finally, I've got a little bonus set. This was not included with the large rover, but this is set number 30682, which was a Technic polybag, and this is what the Perseverance looks like from far away. Okay, it's actually just a polybag Technic set that is supposed to be a smaller scale version of the Perseverance, but you can see a lot of the same features with the power unit here in the back. Please don't make me say those 5 words again. And the camera array here, the differential on top, and of course the arm and the suspension, which works kind of similarly. You can see that the back wheels rotate there, and there is even a turning function on this to move the arm from at least left to right. There is nothing that moves it up and down. So this is my final video about my Lego sets that celebrate American space exploration. Of course, I don't own every Lego set related to American space exploration. There's another rover set, one of the very early Lego Ideas sets for Curiosity, that I don't have, but it also came out at a time I wasn't buying Lego for myself. There's also the International Space Station set, which I don't feel a personal connection to that much, because while I was curious about the International Space Station, I felt like the model was not really that impressive. I mean, it looks nice and everything. It just seemed like it was 8 modules of the same thing. And then there's the Artemis launch system. And the thing that this set did have going for it is it had the launch tower and everything, but I don't feel a personal connection to the Artemis system because it hasn't gone anywhere yet that I'm aware of. And it's not something I grew up with. So I didn't feel the need to own it. And of course, there are numerous other space shuttles that LEGO has made. Some that represent the real space shuttle, some a little less so, but that's not something I collect. But I thank you for watching this video and hope you enjoyed it and any of the other space videos that I did. I still have one more Star Trek video to come out, and then I can finally move on to other themes. October is approaching, which is both a Lego building season and a pumpkin carving season for me, so I'll have plenty of things to talk about then. But until then, remember, today is a good day to build.